The holographic display cast an ethereal blue glow across Dr. Nadia Patel's face as she studied the rapidly scrolling genetic sequences. The lab's darkness was punctuated only by the soft hum of quantum processors and the occasional ping of incoming data from the orbital research station. 20 years after the Nexary War, humanity was still piecing together the mysteries of their survival against an enemy that should have, by all rational calculations, annihilated them. The Nexary were crystalline beings, silicon-based life forms that had evolved in the harsh radiation fields of their binary star system. Their bodies could withstand temperatures and pressures that would reduce a human to atoms, and their technological superiority had been absolute. Yet somehow, humanity had endured. Nadia's fingers danced across the haptic interface, comparing the genetic samples from pre-war and post-war human populations. The changes were subtle but undeniable. Computer, run simulation series Delta 9 again, focus on chromosome adaptation patterns in radiation-exposed populations. The results confirmed what she had suspected for months. Human DNA wasn't just surviving Nexary weapons, it was adapting to them. Each generation born after exposure showed minute but significant changes in their genetic structure, developing resistance to the very forces that should have destroyed them. Dr. Patel. The voice of her research partner, Dr. Rajan Mehta, crackled through the lab's comm system. You need to see this. Observation Pod 3, immediately. Nadia found Rajan in the station's crystallography lab, his dark eyes fixed on a containment chamber holding a fragment of Nexary technology recovered from the war. The crystal shard pulsed with an internal light, its lattice structure shifting in patterns that seemed almost organic. Watch, Rajan whispered, injecting a sample of human cellular material into the chamber. The reaction was immediate and unprecedented. The crystalline structure began to resonate with the human cells, creating a harmonious frequency that neither of them had ever observed. It's not just adapting, Nadia breathed, her heart racing. It's synchronizing. Our DNA, it's capable of quantum entanglement with their crystalline matrix. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just survived the Nexary by chance or superior strategy. Their very genetic code had begun a process of fundamental transformation, one that could bridge the gap between carbon and silicon-based life. Before they could process their discovery, the station's emergency protocols activated. Red warning lights bathed the lab in crimson as Admiral Jun Wei's voice echoed through the station, all personnel to emergency stations. We have detected multiple Nexary vessels entering the system. This is not a drill. Nadia's blood ran cold. The Nexary hadn't been seen in Earth space since the war's end. Their return now, just as she and Rajan had made this discovery, couldn't be coincidence. Save everything, she ordered, her fingers flying across the terminal. Encrypt it all under Protocol Omega. They can't be here for this, but we can't take the chance. As the data transferred to secure storage, Nadia caught her reflection in the observation window. Beyond it, the vast expanse of space was no longer empty. Multiple crystalline shapes had appeared, their faceted surfaces catching and refracting starlight. The Nexary ships were beautiful in their alienness, geometric patterns that seemed to defy physics. Dr. Patel, Admiral Wei's voice was tense but controlled. Report to the command center immediately. Bring your research data. As Nadia gathered her findings, she knew humanity stood on the brink of another transformation. The Nexary hadn't come to finish the war, they had come because they needed something only humans could provide. The question was, would this discovery lead to a new understanding between species, or would it spark another conflict that could reshape the very nature of life itself? The fate of two species now rested on the data in her hands, and the next few hours would determine whether humanity's genetic gift would become a bridge to peace or a catalyst for their final destruction. The Nexary delegation materialized in the station's conference chamber like shards of living crystal, their translucent bodies refracting the overhead lights into rainbow cascades. Ambassador Tarun Desai maintained his composure, though his palms were sweating beneath the formal diplomatic attire. 20 years of peace hadn't dulled the visceral memory of what these beings were capable of. The lead Nexary, who had introduced itself as Resonance of Dawn, stepped forward. Its crystalline form shifted through various geometric patterns, their equivalent of body language. "We come seeking dialogue," it communicated through the quantum translator. "Our species faces extinction." Dr. Patel stood beside Tarun, her research data projected in the space between them. The Nexary's admission confirmed her suspicions about their sudden return. "You've detected the changes in our genetic structure," she stated, not a question but a conclusion. "Your species has achieved what we thought impossible," Resonance of Dawn replied. "Your genetic code has begun harmonizing with our crystalline resonance. We have been watching, waiting for the process to stabilize." Admiral Wei, positioned near the chamber's exit, tensed visibly. "You've been monitoring us? In violation of the peace treaty?" "Survival supersedes treaties," another Nexary, Prism of Twilight, interjected. Its faceted surface rippled with patterns that the translator interpreted as urgency. "Our reproduction cycle is failing. Each generation becomes more brittle, less able to maintain quantum coherence. We estimate 3 generations before total collapse." Tarun stepped forward, his diplomatic training taking over. "And you believe human DNA holds the key to your survival? That seems convenient, given our history." "Not convenient. Essential." Resonance of Dawn's form shifted to a more complex configuration. "Dr. Patel's discovery confirms what our own scientists theorized. Human DNA possesses unique quantum adaptive properties. Your bodies learn to resist our weapons by fundamentally altering their structure at a quantum level. No other species has demonstrated this capability." Nadia pulled up a new set of data streams, her excitement as a scientist warring with her caution. "The synchronization patterns we observed, they weren't just adaptation. They were communication attempts, weren't they? Your weapons weren't just weapons. They were probes." The Nexary delegation's crystalline forms hummed in harmony, their version of affirmation. "We did not expect your species to survive initial contact," Prism of Twilight admitted. "When you did, we continued the conflict to test the limits of your adaptation. It was necessary." "Necessary?" Admiral Wei's voice was sharp as steel. "Millions died in that war. And billions more will die if we do not reach an agreement," Resonance of Dawn countered. "Both our species face extinction without cooperation. Our crystalline degradation accelerates. Your genetic adaptations, while remarkable, are unstable. They require our resonance to fully stabilize." Tarun felt the weight of history pressing down on him. This wasn't just a negotiation, it was a pivot point for both species. "What exactly are you proposing?" A synthesis, Resonance of Dawn's form shifted into a complex dodecahedron. "Voluntary genetic exchange. Selected human candidates whose DNA shows the strongest adaptive patterns would undergo a process of quantum genetic fusion with our essence. The result could save both our species." "And if we refuse?" Admiral Wei asked, though they all knew the answer. "Then we both face extinction. Separately, slowly, but inevitably." The Nexary's message was clear through the translator. "Your bodies will eventually destabilize from the incomplete adaptations. Our crystalline structures will continue to degrade. The choice is cooperation or mutual destruction." Dr. Patel stepped closer to the holographic displays, her mind racing with possibilities. "The genetic compatibility patterns in my research, they're not just theoretical, are they? You've already attempted synthesis." The conference chamber fell silent. Finally, Resonance of Dawn's form pulsed with what the translator interpreted as reluctant acknowledgement. "One attempt. 20 years ago. The human subject survived for 3 days. Long enough to prove synthesis was possible, but not how to maintain it." "Who?" Admiral Wei demanded. "Which human?" "A soldier," captured during the final battle. She volunteered when she understood what was at stake. Her sacrifice proved that our species could merge, that survival was possible through cooperation rather than conflict. Tarun watched the reactions around the room. Dr. Patel's scientific fascination, Admiral Way's barely contained fury, his own diplomatic calculation. The next words he spoke would set the course for humanity's future. "We'll need time to consider your proposal," he said carefully. "And full access to all your research data, including the details of the previous attempt. Time is a luxury we do not possess," Prism of Twilight warned. "Our degradation accelerates. We estimate 6 Earth months before the process becomes irreversible. Then we'll have an answer in 3, Tarun promised, knowing he was committing humanity to the most crucial decision in its history. "But remember, this time, we negotiate as equals." As the Nexari delegation dematerialized, Tarun turned to Dr. Patel. "Can it be done? Can we trust them?" Nadia's eyes were fixed on her data displays, already integrating the new information from the Nexari. "The real question, Ambassador, isn't whether we can trust them. It's whether we can afford not to try." The synthesis chamber resembled a hybrid of human medical bay and alien crystal garden. Dr. Nadia Patel checked the quantum resonance readings for the 100th time as her volunteer, Lieutenant Rohan Sharma, lay on the examination platform. Crystalline formations grew from the chamber walls, their faceted surfaces pulsing with internal light. "Last chance to back out," she said, though they both knew he wouldn't. Rohan had lost his entire family during the Nexari War's final days. Yet here he was, offering himself as the bridge between species. "Just promise me one thing, Dr. Patel," Rohan's voice was steady. "Make it mean something." Resonance of Dawn and 3 other Nexari observers positioned themselves around the chamber. Their crystalline forms vibrated at frequencies that made Nadia's teeth ache. The quantum translator interpreted their harmonics. "We begin the bonding sequence. Lieutenant Sharma, prepare for initial resonance." The chamber hummed as crystalline energy suffused the air. Rohan's body tensed as the first wave of quantum particles washed over him. His DNA, already showing strong adaptive markers, began to respond to the Nexari resonance. "Cellular integrity holding," Nadia reported, watching the molecular displays. "Quantum entanglement initiating at the genetic level. Heart rate elevated but stable." Through the observation window, Ambassador Desai and Admiral Wei watched with barely concealed tension. The fate of 2 species hung on this moment, this impossible attempt to bridge the gap between carbon and crystal. The first hour passed in a haze of technical adjustments and careful monitoring. Rohan's DNA was accepting the quantum modifications, adapting in ways that exceeded their theoretical models. The Nexari observers vibrated with what the translator identified as excitement. "Second phase beginning," Resonance of Dawn announced. "Crystalline integration commencing." This was the crucial stage, the point where the previous attempt had failed 2 decades ago. Nadia watched as microscopic crystal formations began growing within Rohan's cells, not destroying them but merging with them in a dance of impossible biology. Then everything went wrong. Rohan's back arched as pain ripped through him. "Something's happening," he gasped. "It's like I can hear them. All of them." The Nexari's crystalline forms pulsed rapidly. "The quantum link is spreading too quickly," Prism of Twilight warned. "His consciousness is connecting to the collective." "Shut it down," Admiral Wei ordered through the comm. "No." Both Rohan and the Nexari spoke in unison. "We're so close. I can see. I understand." Nadia's instruments showed Rohan's brain activity spiking in patterns she'd never seen before. The crystal formations in his cells were creating new neural pathways, new ways of processing reality itself. "His DNA is completely rewriting itself," she reported, fascinated and terrified. "The quantum entanglement is allowing his genetic code to exist in multiple states simultaneously." "It's beautiful," Rohan whispered. His skin had taken on a subtle crystalline sheen, catching light in impossible ways. I can feel the resonance of stars. The Nexary observers moved closer, their forms synchronizing with Rohan's new quantum signature. The synthesis succeeds, Resonance of Dawn declared. But not as we anticipated. He is becoming something else. Something more. For 3 days, they watched as Rohan transformed. His consciousness flickered between human individuality and Nexary collective awareness. His body became a hybrid of organic matter and living crystal, each form strengthening rather than competing with the other. Other changes manifested. He could process information at quantum speeds, access the Nexary's crystalline networks directly. More significantly, his presence seemed to stabilize the degrading patterns in the Nexary observers. Your genetic adaptability, Resonance of Dawn explained, combined with our quantum nature has created a new paradigm. A true synthesis, not merely a merger of existing forms. But the success came with a price. Rohan's transformation was irreversible. He could never return to being fully human, just as he would never be truly Nexary. He had become something unprecedented, a bridge between worlds, but also a warning of what such bridges might cost. The implications rippled through both species. Human conservatives called it an abomination, while Nexary traditionalists feared the loss of their pure crystalline nature. Yet others saw hope in Rohan's transformation, a path forward for both species. We need to understand exactly what happened, Nadia told the assembled human and Nexary leadership. The process wasn't just genetic engineering or quantum manipulation. Something fundamental occurred at the intersection of our species. Ambassador Desai, watching Rohan communicate simultaneously with humans and Nexary, voiced the question they all feared: can we control it? Or have we started something beyond our ability to manage? Perhaps, Resonance of Dawn resonated, control is not what either of our species needs. Perhaps evolution demands we surrender to transformation. As if in answer, the crystal gardens throughout the station began to pulse in harmony with Rohan's new quantum signature. The boundary between biology and crystal, between individual and collective, was blurring. And in that blurring lay either the salvation or the end of both their species. 3 months after Rohan's transformation, the orbital research station had become a symbol of both hope and controversy. Crystal formations now grew freely throughout its corridors, responding to the presence of its hybrid resident. Dr. Nadia Patel found Rohan in the observation dome, his crystalline-flecked skin catching starlight as he communed with a cluster of Nexary youth. "They're afraid," he said without turning, sensing her approach through the quantum link they now shared. The connection was weaker with unmodified humans, but it existed. Not just the conservatives. Everyone. They should be. Nadia watched as patterns of light rippled across his skin. The changes are spreading faster than we predicted. Even those who haven't undergone synthesis are showing signs of quantum resonance. It had started with the station's crew, subtle changes in their cellular structure, increased sensitivity to crystalline frequencies, dreams filled with alien geometries. Then reports came from Earth and the Nexary homeworld, spontaneous crystal growth in human settlements, organic patterns emerging in Nexary structures. Evolution doesn't ask permission, Rohan mused. The young Nexary around him pulsed in harmony with his words. Both our species were already changing. The synthesis just accelerated the process. A holographic alert materialized beside them, Ambassador Desai requesting their presence in the emergency council chamber. The news from Earth had grown increasingly tense. Religious groups claimed the synthesis was an affront to human nature. Scientists warned of uncontrolled genetic cascade effects. Political leaders demanded regulation of a process they barely understood. In the council chamber, Admiral Wei was already arguing with the Nexary delegation. "We can't contain it," he insisted. "Every new synthesis candidate accelerates the ambient quantum field. We're approaching a tipping point." "That is precisely the goal," Resonance of Dawn countered. Its crystalline form had begun showing organic patterns, just as human synthesis candidates developed crystalline aspects. The convergence cannot be stopped. It was inevitable from our first contact. Inevitable. Ambassador Desai looked older than his years. You knew this would happen. We suspected, Prism of Twilight admitted. Our degradation, your adaptation, they were complementary processes. The war itself may have been the catalyst, creating the conditions for quantum evolutionary synchronization. Nadia pulled up her latest research data. The changes are following a logarithmic progression. Each successful synthesis strengthens the quantum field, making subsequent transformations easier. But it's not just affecting synthesis candidates anymore. The displays showed it clearly, humanity's collective DNA was shifting, responding to the presence of Nexary crystalline patterns. Meanwhile, the Nexary were developing organic components, their pure crystal forms becoming more flexible, more adaptable. We're witnessing forced evolution, she continued. Both species pushing each other toward a new form of life. And we can't stop it, Rohan added. Through his quantum senses, he felt the changes rippling across space, humans and Nexary alike transforming at the molecular level. We can only choose how to face it. The debate raged for hours. Some advocated for isolation, trying to slow the process. Others argued for embracing the change, establishing synthesis centers to help people transition safely. Through it all, the station's crystal gardens grew, organic matter intertwining with geometric patterns in ways that defied traditional biology. Then the reports started coming in from the outer colonies. Children born to parents who had been exposed to the quantum field were showing signs of natural synthesis. Human babies with crystalline patterns in their DNA, Nexary offspring with organic components in their matrix. This is what you meant, Nadia realized, looking at Resonance of Dawn. When you said time was running out. You knew we were already past the point of no return. The Nexary's form shifted in what she had learned to recognize as resignation. The choice was never whether to allow the change, but whether to guide it. Your Lieutenant Sharma showed us the path. Now we must decide, do we fight our own evolution, or do we embrace it? As if in answer, the station's systems registered a massive surge in quantum activity. Throughout human space and across Nexary territories, the ambient field was reaching critical levels. The next phase of their shared evolution was beginning, ready or not. Rohan placed a hand against the chamber wall, feeling the pulse of change through both its crystal and metal components. I can hear them, he whispered. Everyone. Everything. We're all connecting. The transformation that had begun with one soldier's sacrifice was becoming a tidal wave of change, reshaping the very definition of life itself. As human and Nexary leaders argued about how to proceed, reality was making the choice for them. The quantum surge swept across known space like a silent tsunami. Dr. Nadia Patel watched through the station's crystal organic viewing ports as the wave of transformation reached Earth. Cities glowed with newfound resonance as human structures began incorporating crystalline patterns, while reports from the Nexary homeworld described living crystal spires sprouting organic tendrils. It's beautiful, Rohan whispered, his hybrid form now more evolved than ever. Can you feel it, Doctor? The barriers breaking down. She could. They all could. The quantum field had reached a critical threshold, creating a psychic bridge between all sentient beings. Humanity's greatest fear, the loss of individuality, proved unfounded. Instead, they gained a deeper understanding of connection while maintaining their unique consciousness. The children are adapting the fastest, Ambassador Desai reported, his own skin beginning to show the faintest traces of crystalline patterns. They don't fight the change. They embrace it. The latest data from Earth showed newborns naturally manifesting hybrid traits, human babies with subtle crystal formations, able to process information at quantum speeds. On the Nexary homeworld, their offspring developed organic components that strengthened their crystalline structures, preventing the degradation that had threatened their species. Admiral Wei, who had long opposed unrestricted synthesis, stood at the chamber's center, watching his own hands as quantum patterns danced beneath his skin. All this time, he mused, we thought we were choosing whether to allow this. But this was always our destiny, wasn't it? Not destiny, Resonance of Dawn corrected, its form now a beautiful merger of crystal and organic matter. Potential. Your species' gift for adaptation, our quantum nature, they were complementary from the start. The war wasn't about conquest. It was about catalyst. Through the quantum network that now connected them all, they could feel the changes rippling through both civilizations. Fear gave way to wonder as people discovered new abilities, new ways of perceiving reality. The hybrid consciousness allowed them to maintain individual identity while sharing a deeper connection to the collective experience of both species. Nadia's research labs had become transformation centers, helping people understand and control their emerging abilities. The synthesis isn't just physical, she explained to a group of human and Nexary scientists, their forms all showing various stages of hybridization. It's reorganizing our consciousness, creating new neural pathways that exist in quantum superposition. The station itself had become a living entity, crystal and metal and organic matter working in harmony. Through its corridors walked the future, humans with crystalline enhancements, Nexary with organic flexibility, and natural hybrids who had never known separation between the two states. Look, Rohan called their attention to the long-range sensors. The quantum field had begun affecting other species, other worlds. Wherever life existed, it was adapting, evolving, finding new ways to bridge the gap between organic and inorganic existence. We should be afraid, Ambassador Desai said, watching the changes spread. This is the end of humanity as we knew it. The end of the Nexary as they were. No, Nadia countered, taking in the sight of their transformed world. It's the beginning of what we can become together. The quantum network hummed with shared understanding. Through it, they could feel the first stirrings of something greater, not just a merger of two species, but the emergence of a new form of life that carried the best of both. Human adaptability and individual creativity married to Nexary quantum processing and collective wisdom. There will be challenges, Resonance of Dawn acknowledged. Not everyone will accept the change easily. But we can face them together, as neither human nor Nexary, but as something new. A year after Rohan's first transformation, the station hosted a unique celebration. In the Crystal Gardens, now lush with hybrid life forms, the first generation of natural-born hybrids played among the crystalline flowers. Their laughter carried both human joy and Nexary harmony, their forms perfect unions of flesh and crystal. Nadia found Rohan there, teaching the children to control their quantum resonance. Was it worth it? She asked. That first step into the unknown. He smiled, his hybrid form now fully stabilized, a bridge between worlds. Look at them, he gestured to the children, to the transformed station, to the glowing earth below and the distant Nexary homeworld. We didn't just save our species. We transcended them. Through the quantum network, they felt the pulse of their new civilization, billions of minds linked but individual, each one adding to the harmony without losing their unique voice. The war that had nearly destroyed them had instead forced them to evolve, to reach beyond their limitations and find a new way of being. As the hybrid children played, their forms shifting between crystal and flesh with natural ease, Nadia realized that this was more than survival or adaptation. It was revolution, evolution, and transcendence all at once. The story of humanity hadn't ended, it had merely entered its next chapter, written in crystal and stardust, resonating with the quantum symphony of life itself. In the endless dance of evolution, they had discovered a profound truth: the greatest strength lies not in resistance to change, but in the courage to embrace it, to allow transformation to reveal new horizons of possibility. And in that truth, both humanity and the Nexary had found not just survival, but rebirth.